Like and subscribe right now. Or else this will be in your bed tonight. That's when it got hilarious. The next Monday he comes waltzing in wearing a product of his own design. Needless to say, he was pulled from class before lunch. What is one rule that was implemented at your school or work that backfired horribly? My company, as part of its alcohol policy, said you should not drink for at least 4 hours before coming to work. When engineers got called about production problems over the weekend, they all just had a beer but could be there in about 4 or 5 hours. Our school made it so you couldn't play dodgeball anymore. So what happened was that the gym teachers came up with this new game called Fireball. The rules are there are balls in the middle of the gym, people go on 2 separate teams, go for, and if you get hit you're out, if you catch a ball you okay, so it was basically dodgeball. Then Fireball was banned. So now there's this new game called Pinball, which isn't involving the machines unfortunately, but it's basically dodgeball, but there's bowling pins that need to be knocked over as well. I think they just gave up after a while. My high school was trying to prevent a senior prank since the class before us had got a little out of hand. They basically told us not to have one, that they would get anyone who did anything in a lot of trouble, yada yada. So somebody has an idea. What if we do an anti-prank? The idea had floated around the halls and everyone knew what we were going to do. For an entire week, every senior was going to bring a potentially threatening item for a senior prank, and do nothing with it. The week starts and that Monday, nearly the entire senior class carries a banana with them to every class. This is a school of 2,600 student, 650 graduating class. So there are hundreds of bananas being carried through the halls, teachers and assistant principals freaking out. By noon, an announcement was made that all bananas needed to be eaten or thrown away or they would be confiscated. So by that afternoon, every banana was taken away from the student. The next day got even better. Somebody has the idea that we should all bring a gallon jug of water with us to class. And to no one's surprise, again there is an announcement that they are going to start taking up the water jugs for fear of what we are going to do with them. But this time, the students got creative. People are resentful now and not wanting to give up their precious water. Students are getting creative, hiding them in backpacks, avoiding teachers in the hallways, whatever it took to keep their water jugs. But alas, most of the jugs had been confiscated. So the students start taking to social media. Tons of tweets and mentions are going out to local news stations, TMZ, Oprah, Ellen, you name it, they got mentioned. All of these messages are going out along the lines of school is confiscating all water, not allowing students to drink water. You get the picture. Before the end of the day, 2 different news reporters were at our school. Guess we had the last laugh after all. In my dorm, if you did something that triggered the smoke fire alarm, you had to do a safety presentation for everyone on your floor. This was intended to deter pranksters from pulling the alarm. A guy on our floor was making grilled cheese in the kitchenette, and burned it, which legitimately triggered the fire alarm. Afterwards, he explained, assuming that since it had been a legitimate alarm, and not a prank, that he wouldn't have to do a presentation. He was, of course, wrong. So, the next Wednesday night, the entire floor assembled, and we were treated to a 30-minute safety presentation on the dangers of grilled cheese sandwiches. It contained literally nothing about fire safety. It was all choking hazards and cholesterol. Our RA was furious, but the student pointed out that the write-up that he'd been given just said safety presentation. We didn't get any more presentations after that. If you violated the dress code policy, you had to wear these really big grey sweatpants or sweatshirts that said DCV in big orange letters. Dress code violation. It became a thing to get caught because they were apparently really comfortable. When the admin finally caught on that people were trying to get them on purpose, they changed it so that you got in-school suspension. Jokes on them for that too. Lots of kids preferred that over being in class. Well, it wasn't a school-wide policy, but I had a super bitchy French teacher who would constantly hand out detentions for things as inconsequential as walking to the trash can to throw away a piece of paper. She absolutely could not deal with the fact that we periodically might need to actually leave our chairs for a perfectly valid reason. One day she locked herself out of the classroom and nobody would let her back in. Sorry. We aren't allowed to get out of our seats. She had to get the janitor, lol. There was a rule they put in place my freshman year of high school, that if you arrived late, after the first bell, you couldn't park in the parking lot. You'd have to park at the gas station down the highway and walk to school, making you even more late. It stopped after 20 or so people intentionally showed up late to school and made a mass exodus along the highway, on top of a lot of parents bitching. I never understood the logic of rules like this. Oh, you're late to class? Well, let's make you jump through hoops to make you even more late, as punishment. All this does is that when people are late, they'll just leave instead of dealing with that. My school banned all balls over a couple of inches in diameter because someone kicked a football through a window during lunch. Most of us that walked home, walked past the woods by the golf course, and had a ready supply of golf balls as a result. Golf balls were allowed under the new rules due to their size. 3 broken windows in one lunch period later they weren't. I'm a programmer. On a previous job, the developers and teams were measured by the number of feature requests they completed. We figured out to subdivide everything to blow it up into the maximum number of feature requests possible. A manager might request a new report. We'd set up separate feature tickets for create button, make button, blue, make button, respond when clicked, implement business logic, display results in grid, allow sorting of grid, and so on. We'd subdivide a 1-day task into 21-hour tasks. Management loved it. Our team looked 20 times as productive, despite deliberately slowing ourselves down with red tape. I went to a private school for elementary, where uniforms were strict. If you didn't wear a belt, you'd go to the principal's office and he would make you use a shoestring. Well, when he opened the drawer there were like 6 different colors and everybody thought it was really neat. So for a short period of time there were a bunch of kids coming to school with no belts so they could wear their lime green shoestring belt. New manager got rid of the sofa in the break room so people couldn't nap on their hour-long lunch break. No one overslept or took the piss, but it was good to have the option on a tough day. Stoner guy started sleeping in other places, including in between walls and in the warehouse. That's when we started losing him and couldn't find him, as he'd go into a deeper sleep and was less likely to be disturbed. He didn't lose his job somehow, that place had a hard time hiring. Edit, to clarify where the stoner guy would go, we'd find him in between walls and shelves. It was a DIY store that had been something else years before, so there were random partition walls and oddly laid out shelving units everywhere, a real shit show of a store layout. He had quite a few places to hide in and nap. They made a new rule where we had to ask permission to use the restroom during lunch. We all coordinated, and the whole cafeteria would raise their hands at once to request to go. They responded by sending us 2 at a time. We did this for a few days, then changed our procedure to everyone just getting up at once and going to the restroom without permission. They didn't ever officially do away with the rule, but the teachers on duty in the lunchroom eventually just stopped enforcing it. No running during recess. It was made because some kid in the 2nd grade ran and tripped. So for whatever reason, they restricted running for all grades K to 5th. Everyone should know that when you ask a 5 to 10-year-old to not do something, that's the next thing they're going to do. They started running in the halls, the cafeteria, the classrooms, and you bet your ass they ran outside. After a week, the teachers stopped enforcing it and everyone stopped caring. I used to work for a production company that employed a lot of really skilled, award-winning editors. There were producers, and executives, and directors, but the real money makers, the people who really made the company, were the editors. So the company was basically centered around them. The executives would always order in food for the editors, and the editors would usually eat in their offices while doing their thing. One day the executives decided to cut paid lunches to save money. The editors all thought this was a dick move, so they'd go out for lunch and sometimes stay out for like 3 hours. There was nothing the company could do, really, because these editors were top of their game, and if Warner Brothers heard that the editor they always used had left, they might leave, too. So the company couldn't do anything. They saved maybe $15 per person per day, but lost like 4 hours per person per day. Little backstory, my high school was a teeny tiny rural school, 600 kids in grades 7 to 12. Randomly at the beginning of second semester my senior year, the new principal, who had just moved here from an inner city school in another state, decided that we would no longer be allowed to carry backpacks in the halls between classes for safety reasons. Makes sense in this day and age, but the students were pissed about this abrupt change in clockwork of our tiny school. Shenanigans ensued after this new rule came into effect, including every student dropping their books in the hall simultaneously at 10:51 day. My personal favorite was the guy in my class who decided he would make something that couldn't be called a backpack. First he took a bunch of belts, and tied his books together so they could be carried, on his back. That was shut down after day 2. That's when it got hilarious. The next Monday he comes waltzing in wearing a product of his own design. He had made L-shaped shelves from pieces of wood that could be connected to the sides of his legs, and proceeded to harness his books to these leg brace shelves. Needless to say, he was pulled from class before lunch. Like and subscribe for more r/ask Reddit videos.